He's a veteran marketing executive who has worked with bridging technology development, marketing, and sales, knows about how to bring that all together. He leads a company called Forward Vision Marketing, which offers consulting services for utilizing both proven techniques and cutting edge API management techniques. Time permitting, I'd like to get into discussion of that. And he's had a lot of experience, both with small companies and large, managing, you know, multi-billion dollar product portfolios. But before we kick off that, I want to introduce people to the people who are here hosting the event. We've got Founder Institute, and Don Samoil from that, David Stengel from Startup Grind, myself representing Innovators Alliance, and the AI Factor with my friend Jeff Garwood. Jeff, why don't you kick it off and tell people a little bit about the AI Factor?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Pete. No, great to be here. So Jeff Garwood. So basically, I lead the AI Factor Institute, which is based on the bestseller book, The AI Factor. And much of what we do is work with companies on mostly business strategy, aligning business strategy and AI initiatives. So we have basically a platform that we basically walk them through a very structured process to basically get their ideas out, prioritize them, align with business, and get to a point where they can line up what they'd actually like to implement. So that's a lot of our things. So everything from small companies to large, trying to figure out how to set their path forward with AI.
Yeah, this is really great. I attended one of the workshops Jeff hosted, and it was terrific. They really showed you how to really think about your AI strategy and how to brainstorm and come up with ideas to put forth, um, and identify some initial projects and initiatives that would make a lot of sense where you could get a lot of value out of AI. I think that's a big part of the problem, Jeff, right? People are just like enamored with the technology, but aren't really figuring out like where to really apply it in a more practical way.
I think yeah, everybody's got tons of POCs and little pet projects. This is trying to help drive like more corporate alignment and figure out how they can really tie it to business value. So yeah, how do we get the bigger ball rolling with AI and get all these little small projects rolling into something more strategic for a company?
Cool. And I have the company website for all of these companies, institutions, and links here. But Jeff, you're welcome to share in the chat any contact or websites you want to share
Oh,
with anyone
sounds
here.
good. Thank you.
Don, why don't you tell us about the Founder Institute? I'm lucky to be a mentor and joined the team about a year ago.
Thank you, Peter, and we've certainly benefited from your help and knowledge and expertise, and we've got several of us here on the team. Founders is the world's largest pre-seed accelerator. So if you think about Y Combinator, Techstars, whatever, but earlier stage, and we've got 200 cities worldwide. Our chapter covers New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. So we've got subgroups in Princeton and Center City, Philly, and Pittsburgh, and we take early stage entrepreneurs that are just getting going or have their first few customers and a little bit of revenue, and are ready to scale. And well, love to talk to anybody who either is at that stage or has had some exits and had some experience and wants to join us and mentor some terrific entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and the spring cohort is going to be starting in April, so there's still time to apply, and we'll include a link to the website there. If anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me and Don about that. David, welcome. Thanks for joining us 2 days in a row here. We had a fun event yesterday, and we're back again. Tell people about Startup Grind Princeton chapter.
Sure. So we are a chapter in Startup Grind, which globally has chapters in 600 cities and 125 countries around the world. And we're all about helping entrepreneurs get educated, connected, and inspired. The Princeton chapter has been around since 2014, and we're doing our 150th event tonight in downtown Princeton on sports business. But anyone, particularly first-time founders, if you're trying to prepare yourself to speak to professional money, we're here to help, and happy to meet with anyone one-on-one or come to our events. Thanks.
Yeah, David throws great events, and it's great, just like Founder Institute, be part of a larger ecosystem and community. Along the same lines, I started this community called the Innovators Alliance. It's a community geared towards helping people learn, apply, and share their knowledge of artificial intelligence. I'm someone who's built AI platforms and solutions over the last 10 years. And, I'm so amazed, by what's happening with ChatGPT and all these large language models, but still think there's so much more opportunity for people to really start applying it and really seeing the benefits from it. So I started this community where we're hosting these events and co-hosting events with people like Startup Grind and Founder Institute, and promoting, companies and organizations like the AI Factor. So we're really happy to have everyone here. There's also a list of upcoming events for Founder Institute. We've got a full schedule of things, lots of different topics for people to learn. You could scan this QR code or just go to the fi.co website and click on events and see all the cool upcoming events that are coming up. So now I'm going to switch it over to I'm not admitting people to the room here. Going to switch it over to Rich to take over and run with it. And where do I
Go full screen view.
how do I run that? Where's that?
It's behind your chat window, I think. Or it's lower right corner.
Lower right corner.
Yeah, you see the screen. There you go.
All right.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. So
Take it away, Rich.
Alrighty, thank you guys, and great intro, and appreciate the time today. Peter and I were chatting just before the meeting, and one of the things we heard yesterday, which was cool, was Mario who mentioned that when he's working with businesses and he wants to know what they're all about, he's looking for a one-page summary. And this positioning document could actually function quite well in that capacity, because it's telling the person reading it basically what problem you're solving and why. And those are the things that yesterday's call was all about. It's really all about how you're solving the problem and creating value for the customer. So this is a perfect example of something you can use not just as an internal document, which is what it's primarily used for in a company to keep your messaging consistent, but it's also something you can use externally with folks that need to understand what you're doing. So just keep that in mind as we're going along here. So Peter, I'll give you the cues to move the slides along, but thank you. So who am I? Peter covered it kind of in the beginning there. I'm a project, product, and program guy. I've managed very large portfolios for pretty big technology companies, focusing mostly in consumer and B2B. I've done a lot of development work with development teams. I've owned development projects. I've got technical skills in DevOps and Scrum and product ownership. And I most recently ran the worldwide development tools from some very large tech companies. And I've been in the startup community for a while. I've actually done this for about 10 years, working on and off with different startups. And so I've started a new consulting company called Forward Vision, which is about, taking the marketing processes that I know and putting them into actual practice at a startup level, primarily focusing on this thing called the Pragmatic Framework, which in my experience is the best one out there There are others, and you can use others. It's not like this is the only one out there, but in my opinion, it's the best. It's the most comprehensive and it's the most detailed. And that always helps. You focus on customers, you focus on building your products and designing around what your customers want first rather than the other way around. And then you've got different modules for things, but we'll get into all that in a minute. My contact information is there at the bottom. If you want to contact me for additional information or just to talk, I'd be happy to listen. And I'll repeat some of that at the end. So next slide, Peter. So we're going to focus today on the creation and how you really get into this positioning statement thing. It's intended to be an overview. It's not got all the details in it. There are a lot of subtleties and different things you can do to make this work right. This will show you some of the how, what, and why we do it. And we'll have some good examples at the end. We've actually got an example from the audience that I think is going to be very useful in explaining how this works. So again, don't hesitate to contact me after this is over. Next slide. And the key question in all this is, what problem are you solving for a customer and how? I've done this with every single project I've ever been involved with. It's the first question I ask anyone, whether it's a marketing person, a designer, a coder, you name it. And if they can't answer that question consistently and clearly and using a format that makes sense, you're not there yet. You've got to be concise and you've got to be simplistic in this. So the format for this statement is as a something, which is a persona, the product name, service, whatever it is, does something, solves a problem by, and it gives you this benefit. That's the format that works the best. We'll get into how to expand this document much more in a minute. The actual document has more steps than this, but that's what it gets you to relatively quickly. Next slide, please. But first, let's talk about what concise messaging means. And this is critical. One of the great concise messaging stories is FedEx. Everybody knows what FedEx is, right? Does the customer really care about the fact that FedEx delivers millions of packages every day? Not really. They just want to know that their package will be delivered as expected. People don't buy a product. They hire them to make progress on what they want to do. That's the root of the purchasing decision on this. So what's a good statement for FedEx, right? Well, they came up with when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. They did this back in the 80s. It was their core messaging for the first part of their their launch from the early 80s. And then they continued to evolve it along the way. The second message was be absolutely sure, which was an attack on competitors because many competitors had sprung up and done similar services. So they wanted to say, be absolutely sure with us. Then the third version they came up with was relax, it's FedEx, which was targeting a buyer persona and easing that customer stress, which was another great move. And then after they bought Kinko's, they started out with our offices, your offices, which started, the SMB focus for them for workplace solutions. And so along the way, they did all these modifications and they kept evolving their messages. But at the root of it, it was all about the core values of dependability and then expanding on their markets. In 2025, they're using a new phrase, which is we live to deliver, which I think is again, talking about their commitment to the business. They're mentioning things about e-commerce integration and residential delivery too. So they're continuing to evolve this, which is really, really important. So your positioning statement needs to evolve. It's going to evolve over time. Next slide, please. So the pragmatic framework is where the positioning statement is used inside of. And I'm going to spend a minute just talking about what that is. It's a little hard to read here, but you can see that this line, you see this orange line has these different stages in it: market, strategy, business, planning, programs, readiness, and support. And under each of those things, you've got these modules or functions that you have to deal with. Things like market definitions, pricing, getting the buyer personas right, customer retention programs, sales processes, and then all the materials you would need. The thing that's important about this positioning document is that you do this first, and then it helps you in this framework to continue consistency along the way. It builds on the early stages and connects everything and flows through the entire process. It's the central document that's used by everyone. A lot of times people ask me, well, who's responsible for this? In a startup where you don't have a lot of people, you may have one person doing all this, but it could be shared between, the entire product team. Could be a product manager, could be a product owner, could be a product strategist along the way. But again, in smaller teams, it's not going to be that critical who owns it. It's just that everyone should be involved in this too. So you've got, different stages along the way. You've got strategy first, you've got technical second, and you've got marketing third. The engineering teams having this in front of them and using it as a reference document keeps them focused. Yeah, they've got their tasks and their specific sprints and what they're doing, and they should know all that from there, but they can continually reference this. It also helps them prioritize things too, to try and get to those primary goals. The marketing and comms teams, they're going to write external messaging, they're going to create content, they're going to do communications. They need to be consistent with this message. And that document having the consistent messaging is really critical. You'd be surprised how many people forget this and just start trying to create the wheel every time they do something. You don't need to. Once you've got this, you've got a baseline you can start with. And then the sales teams can use this as well. You can use it for sales validation. You can use it for market validation. You can use it to explain to potential buyers how it solves specific product problems for them and meets their needs. It allows them to focus on important benefits. It can attract either a technical buyer or an ROI for an economic buyer. Think of it as your focus statement. You're really just explaining how you're focusing. And if you don't do this in advance, how can you do anything really well if you don't get everybody on the same page, about what you're solving for and whom? That's the core message here, is stay focused and stay on track with this. Next slide, please. And I'll stop for a second for Q&A after this slide. So if you got questions, just hang out for a second. Why do you need to do this? Well, the creation process is defining the strategic blueprint document that defines your market fit and differentiation. It's usually internal documents. It's not usually shared, but it can be used as a shared document if needed. It needs to change. And if you need to pivot, you need to update this document. Don't forget to do that. It's based on a targeted persona, detailing the challenges and your unique solutions. It really affects everything you're going to do. So you need to take time to perfect this. It's changeable. It's not the business canvas. I don't know if you guys have seen the business canvas document. It's much more simple and customer focused. The business canvas is used, more as an overview piece of the overall business. This is really about what problem you're solving and why. The product manager, the owner, can create it early in the business planning process. And you use this document to explain the who and the what and the why of why your product is better than other products or solutions. The buyer should see it as unique in their minds. that you're trying to create that uniqueness with this. It's defined in the context of the problem. Marketing can then leverage this foundational document and create messaging, which is used to create all the materials they're going to need, campaigns, sales tools, etc. The product leader usually owns the messaging. Again, who's that leader? Could be a manager or an owner or a strategist, but it's all about finding the product's identity and communicating it. So everyone's working on the same playbook. I can't reinforce this enough. Again, larger teams have this problem more than smaller teams, but you'd be surprised how easy it is for people to lose track of this. Positioning forces you to identify and spell your benefits out for each type of buyer. And there will be many instances where you're going to want to start with one positioning document and then expand into many positioning documents for different personas, because they are persona centric. And there's an example I'll show you later that actually explains that. Okay, so let me stop for any questions. Anybody have anything so far?
Feel free to unmute yourself and just jump in.
And if we
So I just want to make a general statement here that as someone who works with a lot of startups, they very often, I see they make the mistake of like, oh, we're going to impress investors and customers with all of these features, with all of the problems we solve, with, all of these, different solutions we have. Or they focus so much on their solution because they're technology people like myself, and they just get enamored with their own technology. What Rich is teaching you here is so important to really start with the audience, understand what their problem is, and then the solution comes last.
That's exactly right, Peter. It's always whenever you're talking to people who are building something, we built the greatest thing ever. The market should beat a path to our door. It doesn't work like that. It never has, it never will. So yeah, that's exactly right. And I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. And because that's by bridging all those different areas, I see that all the time. So you're completely accurate with that. All right, next slide, please.
Next slide.
I have a question. I couldn't get off mute before. I'm sorry. Okay,
Sure.
go ahead. Thanks. So, we talked a little bit about the FedEx, and I kind of thought those were more like slogans than positioning statements. You were mentioning that the position statement is really an internal document.
Yeah, that's about concise messaging. This is now about how to build a positioning statement.
And I'm actually doing this right now, or I thought I had it done. I'm grateful for your guidance there. So I've got about 79 words in mine, and it's really difficult to simplify.
It is.
I've got 3 different customers. I've got a medical device, so I've got the patient, we've got the hospital, and then we've got other people that are also beneficiaries in the process. So, is it okay to just go a little longer because it's an internal document, or will that be kind of like frowned upon when I'm doing it?
Do it. I'll show you how to do it in different ways. Yeah, but you have 3 personas you just mentioned right there. Ideally, you would want 3 positioning documents for each one of those personas, but you can start with 1 and then evolve it. I'll show you how to do it that way. It's faster if you do it that way and you maintain better consistency.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And Rich, I'm assuming you'd always need a buyer, right? You got the buyer and someone that's benefiting. It might be 2 completely different people, right? So there's always going to be a buyer somewhere. It might be the same or different.
The buyer is the primary persona. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the primary. You have different buyers, right? And then the second personas are the users.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, what should it look like, right? So you start off with defining the problem by the industry, outlining ideal solution, and for the specific persona. All right. It's a short message, about 25 words. That's the wonderful thing here, to try and restrict yourself to 25 words. I've had to do that. Like you said, it's not easy, but the more concise you get it, the better it gets, and it starts to ring. You know when you have it. All right. It should state the statement should really emphasize one thing that you want that persona to know and remember. You're really only looking for that ringing singular statement. Next, you want to talk about, a detailed product description, give them insights about, what they're going to sell, if it's for sales and development people. And finally, you get to like a 3 or 5 set of bullets around problem-oriented capabilities that directly connect with how the persona
Are
talks
you
about.
guys seeing the slides, by the way?
Yeah, well, I can see them.
You're not.
No, we see him.
Yeah, go back to 8, Peter. That's it. You're all right.
Okay.
So keep the persona focus. People buy, not businesses. When it comes to buying more complex stuff, again, you may have met several decision makers like you just described. You could categorize buyers into, let's say, a financial buyer, a technical buyer, or a functional buyer. So you can write things differently, or you can try and create one that does messaging for several of those things. It's up to you as far as where you see the best fit is for your market. Usually each of these buyers has a different goal and they want to see through a different lens. So that's why sometimes multiple versions are better. Functional buyers want to know the features and how they'll help their workflows and their people's work needs. The financial buyer wants to know the price and the benefits around an ROI. The technical buyer wants to know how the product will logistically fit in the existing technology in the company. So again, those are different things. It makes sense to focus on those different areas that way. And then you're going to need to mold your message so it resonates with each buyer type. So positioning document written for a salesperson would emphasize features that reduce paperwork, while positioning document for the sales manager would emphasize value of a territory management or something like that. That was something that I saw in the example we're going to show later. So you can start with a single document and customize for the many personas you need to address. Next slide.
Yeah, I love that you're distinguishing between the buyer and the user. So many people miss that distinction. That's a really important distinction.
Yeah, that's so critical. And again, that's why this is an ongoing process. And you'll learn along the way as you encounter different things, these different problems and how you're solving them for different people. You capturing this, documenting this, how this thing is referenced is so critical. Okay, I mean, if hey, remember when we heard about something, or we heard that this guy said that, what was that again? If you've captured it in a positioning document, you've got it. You can go back and reference it. Okay, so how do you build it? You start, again, it requires a lot of time investment. All right, you need at least a day for this, but it works best if you draft it, put it down for a couple of days, and then pick it up later. Don't rush it. This is about, again, the ringing statement that occupies space in your customers' minds. You're going to find it after you've done this, you're going to say, wow, we've got something great here, or we've got a great way of explaining this, and you're going to know it when you get it. And then your team understanding it the same way, that's so valuable and so important. All right, next slide. Things to avoid. This is important. Don't get insincere. If you start doing that, things start to get obscure. They don't read well. Don't try and fool the reader into think your product's more important than it is, or that your product, solves problems that the competition, better than the competition when it doesn't really. You can't fix that. Product must be described correctly for what it needs to be in order to succeed. No amount of marketing bullshit's going to overcome that. Then don't focus on or not focusing on the buyers, Peter, as you just said. Remember, you need to tailor your positioning around an individual customer. One that resonates with one type of buyer will not work with another type of buyer. Don't expect one size to fit all. Start off with general, but then make it more specific. And don't try to be everything to everyone. For example, if Tesla started, you know, if Tesla's customers wanted a gas-powered vehicle, that's not going to work. All right. You can't be everything to everyone. Don't try and take that position. And then, as you said earlier, Peter, talking specs or features instead of solving problems. Most cases, customers don't care about that. They care about things on what they're going to do for them. Even technical audiences are more likely to respond to positioning that is aimed at needs rather than specs. I've seen that so many times. It absolutely happens all the time. Next one. And this is what usually happens when it comes time to talk launch a new product. Someone calls someone, or marketing calls somebody, and they say, I need to do a feature function benefit list, which is totally wrong. And it misses the connection between the feature and the problem being solved. A positioning statement solves for this at the beginning of the life cycle. I can't tell you how many times I've done this in many different companies. It's absolutely the wrong approach. If you do everything right in the beginning, everything is clear, everything is focused, and then you can pivot later if you need to. So don't fall into that trap and wait later on. All right, next one. Here's an example of IKEA as a positioning statement. And I did this really quickly just to show you one example of the 25 words. All right, so what's the primary things you're trying to solve for the IKEA buyer? Well, first thing is price, then things like accessibility, easy to get, easy to transport, easy to get it home, easy to build it. They may have or may not have desires about sustainability. IKEA uses the term innovation, to do something simple, durable, and easy. And then there's a togetherness element, which is the commercials you see people trying to put these things together. And they work well if you use all the screws or you have more than two hands. So sometimes they don't, but if you do it well, it works well. So here's the positioning statement and the way it reads. For the cost-conscious home decorator, the persona, IKEA furniture solves the problem of balancing style and affordability by delivering a well-designed, functional, sustainably sourced furnishings with accessible pricing and buying experience. That's probably a bit long, but it's pretty good. All right. And it covers all of the values that were mentioned there and all the benefits. So this is an example of a core positioning statement for somebody because everybody knows IKEA, right? Yeah. And then here, next one, this is the one that we took that actually is the full positioning document outline. You start off with the buyer persona, who buys it and uses the services. And I'm using buyer, but you can also put user in there as well. Then you have the market segment, industry and market it serves. And you may have multiple industries and markets you serve. So yeah, you should do different ones for those too. The market problem, there is a problem in the industry today. What is it? Describe it as facts. Why does the persona care? All right. And solving the problem in the first place. Then the solution is next. Don't put that in the problem. Wait for the solution. You start the statement. The ideal solution to the problem is, and you write it in the voice of the persona. Don't use jargon. You don't use technicalese here. You focus on what it solves and how it solves the overall problem. State what the problem will accomplish. Accomplish is a key word in this. Then that same format. All right. Only the important information. Don't list features or benefits here. That's going to come up next. Then the product description. And this is where you can get, you can get a little verbose in here. We try and keep it 50 words or less. But talk about what your product does here, just what it does. And then you can go into problem-oriented capabilities and features. And there's a process for this where we can use worksheets to develop what those are. But you start with the personas, and then group them into themes. around certain types of things as bullets. Probably trying to stay less than 5, I should say. And then that capability is a description of the solution to a problem group. You can also list how a feature addresses a specific problem to you. So feature lists are acceptable here as well. Next slide.
Okay.
Testing your
Rich, just give me a sense of timing. We've got about 22 minutes left, so I just want to make sure you have time for the case study.
Yeah,
with,
we're about to get
John, and then some time for Q&A.
Is John on up here?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Hey, John, we'll get to your example in a minute. So testing your document. All right. Once you're done, how do you test it? Well, you look at, once you look at things like, how did you determine your market segments? Who do you think the company, what do you think of, or when do you think of that company? What are the first words that come to mind? What value do you believe the company delivers to you and your organization? Another great tool in all this is also the win-loss analysis. I know a lot of startups aren't into win-loss yet, but if you've got a win-loss program, or you started tracking your win-losses, that's another good way to test that against your positioning statement specifically. All right, let's get into some examples, and we'll do one of these in an example before we get to John's. Here's a full example, and this is for a specific thing around workflow engines. And who is it for? It's for product team members who are, this is the market segment here, tracking the status of marketing problems and field requests. It could be considered a support solution also. Stating the problem. There's a problem in the industry today. Product team members are overwhelmed by feature ideas and product requests outside their company. Yet few tools are available to manage this, all right? The ideal solution would do this: track feature requests and through the development process. Simple statement. Could be more there, but that's a good place to start. The positioning statements: manage the product requirements without all the paperwork. Stay focused on the market needs, keeping your stakeholders informed and essential. That positioning statement's a little weak because it doesn't talk about the persona. Then the description, and then what actually is good on this one is the product-oriented features. You can see the instant requirements, the idea store, the auto feedback, and again, this is bulletized. It's a good way of explaining it. All right, next slide. Next slide is about the personas, and personas are important. And this session is not about writing personas, but notice how comprehensive these persona statements are. The more you can describe their problems and how you solve for them, the better your solution is. And Peter, we talked about with David writing personas and using different tools to do that. So as a follow-up session, we may want to do this. But you look at this particular example. This is a user, which is a patient, and Matt, the medical device distributor, which is the reseller. So the sources of this were referenced in the documents, but there's a lot of detail in here about what are we doing for these folks. And this type of persona problem capture is really, really good to have as a reference. Again, people can go back to and see what were we trying to solve for and how. And it goes into these could be done by interviews. They could be done by lots of different sources to create this. I won't go into this in depth, but there's a lot here with understanding what these are. So having these as backgrounds before you do your positioning statement is very important. So don't skip this step. All right. Here's another one. We're going to skip this one right now, and we'll go right into John's. So skip 3 slides ahead to John's. John, are you
Start here.
on?
Yeah, I'm on here. I'm right here.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Very good. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for this example. This was a pretty good first attempt. I'll give you kudos for that. You did a nice job with following the format. Where I think you got a little crossed up was in the personas, and there were a lot of different personas that showed up in this. So you've got sales managers, VPs, CLO, HR VPs, L&D department heads, deans of universities. You've also got different industries in this. So you've got, education, and then you've got corporate, you've got sales departments, you've got HR departments. I think that's a lot to do in one positioning statement. So you're going to want to break that up.
Absolutely.
All right. And you use the term in the beginning, you're industry agnostic. It may be, but that's not what you want. You want a positioning statement to be industry specific. All right. The sales training programs, managing special professional development, university and college students. Again, different places. So that's, I think, where this got a little bit, less focused than it needed. And again, splitting it up is the answer. You can take this and continue to evolve it. The market solution description is pretty good. Scenario-based learning improves communication skills, personalized feedback, identify, improve skill gaps. Scalability is a key. I'd like to see a little bit more technical design in that. I'd like to see a little bit more details on it, but you did it later. So maybe that'll suffice, but maybe you want to move some of that up into this. And then your positioning statement, again, persona first. And we're solving this for using this to give them a benefit of. You want to follow that format here, right?
Yep.
So rewrite this with that kind of a format, and it'll be easier to manage. The product description is good. It gives you pretty good ideas of what's going on here technically. It gives you some of the system provides performance analysis tracking and evaluation, personal skills and achievements and gaps. That's a benefit. The results are consistent and explainable. That's a benefit. All right, so stay a little bit more into the product on that side and put some of that stuff up into the solution area. Next one. And this is where you went into this is again where I saw the personas taking over here. You had sales managers, L&D department heads, universities. And again, that might be your 3 main verticals in this, and that's you would want to again split this into those verticals.
Yep.
When you get the messaging right, and you'll need to evolve this by that persona analysis, putting more detail around those 3 verticals, you'll get much better focus, and you'll get much more. It'll be much more relevant to those specific areas. So again, these were good, but trying to pile them all in one place is a little bit much. And that's just a function of understanding how to do these things. So again, good general effort, split this into multiple statements, tie it to the industry segments, and be more strategic, and you'll be on the narrower focuses for these specific personas, and you'll be fine. You've got the essential things here. So again, good effort.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I mean, this was, as you know, because this works across industry sectors. That challenge was, we have different buyers, and to your point, in following the program you've laid out, I think is really very, very helpful. And I do recognize that we do need the individual positioning statements. There are different buyers. There's a different story for each one of those buyers and the users of that technology.
Absolutely. Go to 21, Peter? Because that's the slide 21. It's the one after that. Yeah, that one.
This one?
The thing I was talking about, how to do the oriented capabilities. So this is where you write down the problems into the personas you're doing it for, use first person language, then you do grouping by theme, and then you deconstruct those capabilities into the solution. Ideally, the way you structure your problem capabilities mirrors the way your persona talks about the problem. That's the connection that matters. It means you should use, don't use any jargon. Customers really, again, they only care about how you're solving a problem, so focus on that. And if you do that type of exercise, that last piece you just did will be clearer. And I can help you with, if you want, I'll be happy to take a call from you, and we can do some templates on how to do some of those things as well.
Great, I appreciate that. I'll take you up on that.
So we're right at the top of 10 of, and we can jump right into Q&A, and anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Yeah. So I wanted to give John the first opportunity to ask a question, especially so what did you think, John? What did you take away from that, and where, what questions do you have of Rich?
I knew this was one of our problems, and this is what's kept me up at night. Actually, is the messaging. I know we have a good technology. I know we have a really good service offering. We could do some really incredible things, but we haven't been able to really improve the messaging because we haven't focused on it in the right way, I think. And this is really helpful here. This clears up in my mind, and obviously there's got to go through the drill and build and almost take a fresh stab at it. I think we have good groundwork on this because we've had a lot of conversations with companies and so forth, and we have the answers to I think to put this together in a more improved way. And like I said, it's just going through the drill now to go do that.
Yeah, so I would go through these steps as Rich has laid them out, and create those personas and that unique value proposition for each one, and their sets of problems. And then myself and Rich would be more than happy to review them with you. I think this is great. And appreciate you sharing this with the other attendees to see a real life example.
Great. No, I appreciate it. It's my pleasure.
I can share more examples with you too, John, as a reference for this too. I've got a lot of them. You can find these things online too. Believe me, there's plenty of people who publish their positioning statements. A lot of people haven't because they're kind of proprietary, but my suggestion would be get your team together, whoever that is, not too many people, but the key people, lock yourselves in a room and wait till you come out with something that you really all like. And if you don't get to it one day, say, we're not going to get to it today, do it another day. And then all of a sudden, the bells will start ringing and you'll start saying, we got it. And once you have that, it's an epiphany moment. You're going to love it.
I'm with you on that. I agree.
Okay. So let's open it up to the rest of the attendees. Please just come off mute, introduce yourself. Rhonda raised her hand. Please take yourself off mute.
Ironically, I'm sitting here. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Rhonda, good to see you.
Ironically, I pulled out my Pragmatic Institute hard reminders. It was the first thing in my marketing folder, so that was kind of ironic.
Go.
So, but I just wanted to put a plug for after you've done all this really good work, you then have to, as they say, get out of the building. You need to then go validate your assumptions and your thought process with target personas. and do it in an open-ended way. So you're not leading them to what you've written, but getting their candid feedback on their pain points, etc. And I'll just put a plug for on March 4th. We're going to talk a little bit about how do you approach target persona with open-ended questions and more. So, but this
Great.
is really good groundwork you need to do before you go out and test all of your assumptions.
Thanks, Ron. If you could put a link to that event in the chat, that'd be great.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah, so I totally agree with Rhonda. I have sort of a question along that lines, but I want to give everyone else a chance to chime in, give their thoughts, ask any questions they have.
One quick question. So, putting together a pitch deck, how much of the personas, or do you summarize into one position statement? What are you going to present in the pitch deck?
This comes back to the what problems are you solving for the customer and how kind of statements in the pitch deck. It would come relatively early, and it would be, core value messaging, how we're approaching customer problems. You could extract the 5 paragraphs from the positioning document as specific things in your pitch deck. Those are all relevant things, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you could say, hey, for this audience, they experience this problem. Here's how severe and frequent this problem is on your problem slide. And then here's our solution on our solution slide that solves it in a very unique way that is very defensible. And then when you get in your go-to-market strategy, you say, hey, we're going to start by focusing on this segment of, of the audience and then expand into these segments. And that's our path to growth. So that's how those things could, you can weave this positioning statement into the story of your deck. Does that
I
make
like that.
sense? You think that
Weaving
works,
it in.
Rich, or anything you want to add to that?
No, that's all relevant. Again, everything you've written in a positioning statement is relevant in a pitch deck.
Excellent. Thanks again.
I have a question. This is James from Patient Data Exchange. Looking at John's example, is it possible that you can have an overarching statement?
Yes, you can start with an overarch, and then you can get more specific. What you find in the process is that starting with the overarching version will get you some of the way there. But to really be persona specific and really be relevant to those persona problems, you need to get more, focused on individual personas. So it's a process. But again, if you've only got one persona, that's fine. It depends on how many personas and buyers and users you're trying to reach. How big is your market and who's in it. I will say the more detailed and the more granular you get, the better it tends to resonate. That's pretty obvious.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So to piggyback on what Rhonda was saying about testing this, so they're sort of picking your, like, I think of like concentric circles that sort of merge. You have like who your audience is, what the problems, your assumptions on what their problems are, what your solution and features are, and then like, hey, how you're marketing it, what marketing channels you're using. Is it social media? Is it direct sales? Is it, advertising, YouTube ads or something like that, or webinars? Is it, and then what's your positioning, what's your messaging and how effective is that? So like all these things have like, my question to you is sort of like how do you know if you got it right or not? Because it might be that you have the right audience and you have the right positioning statement, but like you just haven't chosen the right marketing channel, or your messaging is just falling flat. Like, what are some suggestions for how to sort of more effectively, to build on what Rhonda was saying, to test your assumptions and test, your tactics towards approaching these various markets?
I think what you're going to do is like we said, ask the customers, go to specific customers and ask them, key questions. What do you think of, when you think of something or other, what's the first words that come to your mind? What value to believe this particular thing delivers to you and your organization? It's more validation than anything. It kind of depends upon where you are. It also comes from your interviews. One of the techniques Ron is mentioning is nothing good happens in the office. So you get to go out and, when you go out and talk to people and you're really in front of your customers, I always found personally that whenever I was dealing with our largest customers, I was always in front of them on a fairly regular basis. And I would say to them, hey, here's a thing that we're working on and here's what we're doing. And we give them that, positioning statement kind of read through and say, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we think it solves. Here's why it solves it, and et cetera, et cetera. And we go for direct feedback and they would say, yeah, that's good. Or that works. Or I have that, but I'd rather you did this or that or the other thing, from me specifically. And then you make a judgment call on, does that fit into the market that we want to address? Do we have the capabilities to address that or not? And then you may move something or other along the way to adjust for that. That happens all the time. And again, it's when you're reaching markets with not that many customers, it's much easier to do that than you are with generalized markets. But I think in the generalized markets, you don't have that much of a challenge. Or I shouldn't say not much. You have less of a challenge in the generalized markets. Once you know you have it, you will know you have it.
Okay. So we're coming up on the hour here. I shared some links to the websites for Founder Institute and Startup Grind, AI Factor. Rich, feel free to drop your email or contact and website in the chat.
Go to number 22, and that's got my contact info on it.
Yeah, but if you can just cut and paste or drop that in there real quick,
Sure.
I'll grab that too. I just have a lot of navigating, a lot of tabs open. The way I roll. But all right. All right, so I just really want to thank you, Rich, for sharing your insight and expertise. Again, I can't emphasize how important it is to focus on this and get this right. This is really the most important first step in launching your product, launching your startup, launching your business. Again, don't start with the solution. Start with who your audience is, what their problems are, and that's where you want to start. It's great advice and was a great presentation. Thank everyone for attending. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you much.
Everyone will get an email in a few days of the recording, and we'll take it from there. And Rich, are you sharing the slides or?
If anyone would like to get copies, give me a call and I'll talk to you about it. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Let me end the recording.
Thank you very much.